Welcome back into the Big Trail Show, and welcome to another Arkansas football recruiting report. Otis Kirk and Jacob Morris with you, joined by a special guest, 2027 Broken Arrow defensive back, Bryson Brown. Bryson, thanks so much for joining the show today.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Quickly, just walk us through the start of the season for y'all. Opening up here in 2025, high expectations for you guys. Walk us through how it's going for you.
Everything's going great. Having a great QB on our team, Jeremiah September. He's a great guy. He's very mobile, very dual threat, and knows how to get the ball going to our receivers and things like that. On the secondary level, got Samaj Stanford, Noah Gillespie, Gaston Farrell, and who else we got? We got Barlow, we got Malik Ross. We got a lot of players on our team, that can really get going. I feel like our secondary is going to be a big part of our team this year, and especially our receiver threats as well. O line as well, D line. Shout out to those guys, man. Those guys are doing a great thing. Starting off 1-0 this season, is a great feeling.
Yeah, talented team for sure. 1-0 for you guys. Let's talk a little bit about the recruitment process for you. It feels like just about, every single school in the country is interested in you. With Arkansas specifically, after your visit, you've obviously with your family connections being, from Pine Bluff originally, the program, all of the above, but it seems like the defensive staff really, stood out to you. What about them during the visit process, during the recruiting standpoint from Arkansas has stood out to you?
Getting to meet Coach Nick Perry and everything like that, getting to meet those guys and the defensive coordinator and people like that, and Coach Sam Pittman as well. It was a true blessing to get out there Saturday to watch them play Alabama A&M. It was a great feeling. They put it on them, so it was a blowout. But overall, it was a great feeling. Getting to be back in Arkansas and things like that. Seeing family as well, and it was great.
How was the visit process for you, being in the stadium for game one and all the above?
It was great, especially like you said, being there for game one. It was a great feeling, fireworks, everything were really going off. Got to meet everybody, getting on the field as well. It was just something I was dreaming as a kid to, be on the field and things like that, and walk around and be there for week one. So that's a great feeling.
For Arkansas fans, describe what type of defensive back you are. What do you bring to the table? How would you describe your game to fans that maybe haven't had the chance to watch you play?
I'm really a high energy type guy. That's the first thing I bring out. But I always, obviously, I can't do it without. I'm sorry. Obviously, I can't do it without with the man above, Jesus Christ. Without him, I can't do nothing. So I always want to give thanks and praise to God and things like that. And then, like I said, I'm just a high energy type guy. I come on the field, I try to do what I gotta do. I try to do my part. And as long as the defense do their part, I'm definitely gonna bring to the table. I'm doing my part. I'm very a physical guy. I fly to the ball. Things like that. So, yes, sir.
People love player comps. You got guys that you like to model your game after. Is it a little bit of everybody? Is there somebody specifically you like to watch?
Really, I like to watch Caleb Downs.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. Playing at Ohio State, playing at Big Ten level and things like that. Just watching him play, and we were the same number, so watching him play and watch how he flies to the ball, and he lays the wood, especially and some teams don't want to throw his way because they know what he's capable of. So watching him, that's a great feeling to watch.
I'll hop in with a few more later. Otis, go ahead.
Bryson, yesterday, talk about the performance of Taylor Green. I know you don't play quarterback, but I know you admire a guy like Taylor Green who can. He brought it yesterday. I mean, he
Oh
put on a
yeah.
show over there yesterday. I told him that before the press conference. Just talk about what your impressions of Taylor yesterday.
Well, this is my first time, watching, because last time when I went up to Arkansas, they had KJ Jefferson, but this
Yeah,
time they had Taylor Green. I'm not gonna lie, he's like a Cam Newton. He's very big. They didn't wanna, he didn't wanna. It was crazy because normally Q's would run out of bounds, but he was trying to truck and give him what their money was worth for. So yeah, he's very mobile QB. He definitely get the ball out. He throws the ball. He got a great zip to it and everything like that. So he's definitely gonna be a great in NFL and things like that.
here's something we've debated. Not Jake and I, but fans over here, and even in the media, we've debated. Last year they had Andrew Armstrong who had nearly 80 catches. and he focused Taylor focused on him a lot. Yesterday, he spread the wealth around. I mean,
Yeah,
you had C.J. Brown, you had
Jay Brown. Yeah.
all those guys. Talk about as a defensive back. What are you? Is it harder for you? You think when they spread the ball around like that, or if they've got a go-to receiver, they're probably going to Andrew Armstrong. Which one do
Mhm.
you? What do you think about that?
Uh, gonna be honest, to be honest, I say like, whatever the coach puts you at, whatever he has as your job, try to handle your side, and if other people, if there's another threat that they got, and you already got one side locked down, either you're gonna have to change the call or you're gonna have to, get moved on to that player. If you doing your thing and you playing the way you can play, I think it's best that you can go lock down the other side as well.
They kind of struggled on it. Well, they didn't kind of struggle. They struggled big time on that first drive on
Mhm.
defense. But after that, they made some
After
adjustments, and
that,
that was
they
to be
made
expected because
big
that
time.
was a new staff, new players. They really didn't have a whole lot of film to study. So they said going in they were going to have to make adjustments on the fly during the game, and they did. But did anyone on defense catch your eye? I mean, anyone really impress you?
uh the linebackers in the corners. I believe it was number 3, I believe so. He was laying the wood. I think he dropped like one pick he had at the
Yeah.
beginning of the game, but he was laying the wood definitely. I was definitely keying him and watching his game, something that I can see my tweaking peaks on what I need to work on, things like that. Cause I definitely see he was flying to the ball. He was anywhere the ball was at, he was either near or he was the one making the plays. So definitely give props to him, for keeping the high energy on defense, not letting down, they got scored on, not letting down, things like that. So, yes, sir.
You guys played Friday night against Springdale Harbor up here. You got Fayetteville this Friday night here. Just how do you feel like you played in the opening game yourself personally? I know
Uh,
you guys won, but how did you do?
I think I played pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, their band was extremely loud. Definitely they got a student section that could talk, but gotta give the props to the team. You know, People underestimated them. They're not underestimated team. You know what I mean? And like I said, they're a great physical team. They know how to play ball. They know how to play ball, especially props out to number 5, number 80, and I believe number 6, the running back. Oh, and the QBs were number 7. Definitely props to them. They played they butts off, and they did a pretty good job, and definitely moving the ball on us, and gave our defense the worth of his money. We still have to finish through the game, but overall, beginning of the game was a dogfight.
You guys, I know you got some time, man. You got plenty of time on this, but do you have a time? Have you thought about a timetable for a decision on your college?
Uh, to be honest, I was thinking about making a decision probably after my official visits. Just getting a feeling, talking to the coach again, and see how things really go off from there. And if things go off great, and wherever God leads me to in the position where I need to be, that's the place where I need to go.
Don't mean to put you on the spot, but there's a pretty good chance Arkansas gets one of your official visits when that time comes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I figured they would, but I just, like I said, I know
Sir.
things change too. I get all that. You've got
Yes,
some
sir.
time, like I said, but just for someone that hasn't seen you play, or maybe hasn't watched the film, whatever, what, what one or two, what not limit to one or two, but what are your strengths, man? What do you do well on the field?
Uh, Definitely, I say covering for sure. Covering that's my main thing, and I say like IQ. Like one thing I really do, I say if this question I probably is about to get asked or haven't got asked, I say one thing I need to work on is really like make sure I'm just staying on my job because I like to be a ball player. That's one thing about me. I love being a ball player because if I see something that's not right, like if I'm already locked on my man and I see somebody coming across and they're near me and I see the QB pump their way, like I like being a ball player. I like to fly to the ball automatically. I like seeing things before anything even happens. That's one thing about me. But overall, like I said, I like to be a ball player and I just covering as well. That's really it.
Uh, you mentioned Kenny Perry earlier. He's a new. Well, this is his first season at Arkansas. He's not new to the business, obviously. He's been in the NFL and everywhere else. What's your impressions of him? What stands out? What stands out to you about him? I'm sorry, I can't talk.
I mean, everything, to be honest with you. I watched how he do his drills and things like that before in pregame. The way he was being efficient and and consistent, and just on his DBs and things like that, the way he was just moving them so fast and rapidly, that's one thing I do like, and the way, how me and him had a conversation before the game, we talked and things like that. I just like the way he's talking and things like that. So overall, it's a great impression by me.
I know you got to cut out early. I'll let Jacob ask some more questions. Hey, man, thank you for your time. I'll let Jacob jump back in now.
Yeah, a few more before we let you go here. As somebody, you grew up in Arkansas, right? You've talked a
Right.
lot about, man, feeling blessed, appreciating all the opportunities you have. Was there kind of a moment yesterday when you're on the field, visiting all the above,
Yeah.
and you're looking around saying, man, it's pretty special that I get a chance
Yes,
to do this?
sir. Yes, sir. Definitely, like I said, pregame, walking onto the field and, getting like in the middle of the hog logo and, looking around, that's just something special. And they all, woo pigs and things like that. That's definitely, great feeling. You know what I'm saying? Like as a kid, growing up as an Arkansas fan as a kid, born and raised from Arkansas, you know what I mean? So, that's definitely great to be around.
You mentioned Coach Perry a couple times there. A lot's been made for good reason about Coach Woodson and Coach Williams. Coach Perry, he's a younger guy, but he has that NFL experience. What has stood out to you in conversations with him? What makes him, a good potential coach for a guy like you?
I mean, really telling me, like I have a chance. Like if I come there, I can compete. Anybody like that's one thing about Arkansas. They're not really caring if you a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. You have a chance to come there and compete, be the best you could be, and maybe have a chance to in and out starting roles. So wherever I choose to, that's what I definitely want to be. Compete my way up to be a starter, either by my freshman year or sophomore year. You know what I mean? So yes, sir.
All right, back here on the Arkansas Football Recruiting Report. Special thanks again to Bryson for joining the show there. He had to get away to watch film, Otis. He's a dedicated guy, but a great interview there. Obviously, a target Arkansas would really like. Hey, quickly, Otis, before we wrap up here, the Hogs 1-0. We've been waiting for week one for forever. So let's hit a couple takeaways here. Arkansas taking care of business yesterday against Alabama A&M. 52-7, the final, not quite 70-0 from a year ago against UAPB. Just quick initial takeaways from the performance. It's hard, really,
Well,
right, to get, a massive, we know a lot more about this team. We don't, quite frankly, but what were some of your takeaways from the win?
well, the one thing that's been a big question. I talked to Bryson about this was the fact that so much has been made about the new receivers.
Yeah.
Like all the receivers from last year were gone just about. And CJ had 5 catches, led the team, was the leading receiver from last year coming back. But I was really impressed. I never felt like that would be an issue, the new receivers, because these guys are good. And it wasn't yesterday. It showed that. I mean, Taylor could spread the ball around and they all make great catches and it showed they're very deep there. And personally, I like that better than having like one or two go-to guys. I mean, I like the fact now the defense can't load up on just one. If they load up on just one guy, C.J. Brown again, or somebody else will. So I like that, and I never felt like that would be a problem. But I think they proved yesterday they're probably not going to be a problem. The defense. There was a lot of people. There was a fire T wheel after the first drive, and I get that. It's initial reaction. But look, I had it. I had a story last week on Hogville Pig Trail Nation that I think it was Sam Pittman said that. Well, I know it's Sam Pittman said that. It may take a drive or two before them to really get the feel of what, because there was not very much film available. I mean, this was a new staff and with the new poor players and stuff. They really wasn't like they could put in last year's film of Alabama A&M and know what was coming. They had Miles College where that staff was from, but it's different players and it took a while to adjust. So that did not surprise me that they struggled that first round. What was impressive though, Jacob, is after that, uh, even the second drive, Alabama A&M was having some good luck then till there was offsetting penalties. Arkansas jumped off sides.
Yeah.
Alabama A&M got called for blocking back down the field, and that called that play back. It seemed like after that, bang, the light went off for the Arkansas defense, and they pretty well shut them down the rest of the game, And there was a better team than the UAPB team that they played last year to open the season, and I was impressed. I mean, obviously they've got work to do. I mean, and nobody's saying they're going to win a national championship. I mean, I've said all along that was the one game on their schedule that was almost a was a sure win. There's no more. Even Arkansas State, I know some fans are counting as a sure win. I'm not buying it. I think Arkansas will win, but call it a sure win. No, there's not one left on the schedule. So it's going to get tougher and much tougher. But I think Arkansas's got a pretty good team. They've just got to, I don't know about the depth on the defensive line. We're going to have to see if they can get better there. Cam Ball's a stud. Quincy Rhodes is good. I was glad to see Charlie get the start yesterday. But anyway, get David Oakey back eventually will help there. But I was impressed with him, Jacob. I like the fact they've got all those receivers. Those guys are good. Yeah, they weren't there last year. Maybe none of them. And I said none of them will catch 80 passes this year, lead the SEC. But they don't have to. You can spread the ball around. But I thought CJ really has stepped up a big time notch from last year, to this year. He looks like a completely different, as he should. He's a sophomore now. You're not a true freshman. I was impressed with him. I mean, there's the offensive line got beat a couple of times. A little bit surprising there, but hey man, every team. That's why when you see in the portal, Arkansas go to school like Troy or Alabama A&M or UAB and get a player or two. Every team has some players that can play in the SEC level, and those Wright guys on the team named Wright, that linebacker. Man, he's good, and he had both those sacks, and they got some good players there, but I was impressed overall.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's not. We always talk about this, right? When you're playing an FCS school, it's
Yeah.
you got to be really careful about making large, and you're not doing it.
Oh
But
yeah.
some people are going to, right? The defense is this, the offense is this. But if you're looking for takeaways, I think you mentioned it with the wide receivers, and
Yeah.
specifically with CJ Brown, just from the standpoint of where he is running with the team on the depth chart, right? I think
Yeah.
it's like it's hard to remember sometimes he's a true sophomore, and for him to
Yeah.
perform like that, right? I mean, he is a guy that is going to play a massive role, and that's fun from him being a local kid and him clearly elevating his play, right? And I think sometimes it's funny the way that certain plays and the way things go can kind of tint the view of things, right? Like, I think we probably should have viewed last season for CJ Brown as a raging success. Like he's a true freshman. He got on the field and he was playing
Yeah.
snaps. Instead, all everybody wanted to talk about was, oh man, he fumbled against Texas.
Yeah.
I was like, he was playing
Yeah.
against Texas as a true
Yeah.
freshman. That's probably where the focus should have been, right? And so
Yeah.
now I think
Exactly.
you're kind of you're starting to see rather them reaping the rewards of developing
Yeah.
him, and that's really fun to see. The fact of the matter is, we're just not going to know in terms of this defense. I think all of us had kind of an eyes wide moment where we were worried about defensive depth, and Alabama
Well,
A&M goes 75 yards down the field
yeah.
and starts the game
So
like
easily.
that. And we're
So
like,
easily.
oh
Yeah.
man, right? You're
Yeah.
not really going to know until Ole Miss, and hopefully you don't know this week against Arkansas State. Quickly before we go, the next time you and I talk will be after Arkansas State. Do you have a
Right.
prediction? What are you expecting to see in Little Rock this weekend?
I think Arkansas, the key to me for Arkansas to win that game, because I'm not one of those things that's going to be a blowout. I really don't.
Yeah.
I think the key is Arkansas's got to punch them in the face early. They cannot let this be a fourth
Yeah.
quarter game, because if it comes down, it's fourth quarter, that game can go either way, Jake. I think the key for Arkansas is to go out there, because they're going to get Arkansas State's best shot. They've waited a long time for this game, and I get it. I get it completely. They're going to
Yeah.
get Arkansas State's best shot. But what you've got to do, you've got to take that best shot, give them your best shot back, and punch them in the face and make it a 2 or 3 quarter game, because you cannot go in the fourth quarter with this a one score or this game in doubt, because if you do, it's going to be anybody's game. And I'm telling you, you don't want to let them be hanging around the fourth quarter. So I think the key is this Arkansas to jump on Arkansas State. They're going to get their best shot, but take it, then punch them in the face and go out here and try to build a lead at halftime and then build on it in the third quarter and not take it down to the last few minutes, because that's not going to be a good sign if they do.
Yeah, just for reference, early lines right now, Arkansas is a 21.5 point favorite. I think you make a great point in terms of you have to end this thing early because Otis, you've been to a lot of football games. You've been to games like this. These stadium will get incredibly anxious and it will get uncomfortable if this is a 7 point game in the third quarter. All of a sudden people are going to start whispering. It's going to feel anxious. It's going to feel like War Memorial Stadium. The walls are closing in. So you got to end this thing early in the first half.
You've got to do what Tennessee didn't do at Fayetteville last year.
Yeah.
Tennessee let Arkansas hang around, Jacob.
Yeah.
They let them hang around. And at the end of the game, in the third quarter, Arkansas started believing. Well, they probably believed, but I mean, you could tell in the third quarter, the
Yeah.
fans started believing, the Razorbacks started believing. And, you saw what happened. And I'm telling you, that can happen, man. If you've got to do what Tennessee couldn't do in Fayetteville last year. You go out there and take them out early because Arkansas State's been told they can't play with Arkansas. They're saying, "Oh, bull, we can play with them." They believe they can, and I think they can. But I mean, they won 42-24, I believe, yesterday over Southern Missouri. I believe that was the score, Jacob. I put it in my story this morning, but Arkansas really cannot let that go down like Tennessee did against them last year, because anything in that fourth quarter, man, when it starts getting down there, yeah, they're going to believe. The fans are going to get louder. It's going to be a little bit louder on that side. It don't matter how many fans, if it's 50, 60, 40, whatever, the Arkansas fans are going to be louder in the fourth quarter because they're going to smell blood, man, and they're going to go for the throat. And that's just the way it is. And that's why Arkansas's got to take care of business early. They cannot let them hang around.
Yeah, it's the wonderful thing about college football, the way that, and you hope Arkansas is not in that position, but the
Yeah.
way as time crawls by in the third quarter, it
Yeah.
just begins to shift. That's why you always say the longer you let teams like that stick around,
Exactly.
the more it goes the other way, where it just starts to get uncomfortable. And, you hope Arkansas is not in that position. Regardless, it's going to be just an awesome spectacle for the state. Excited both teams are playing that game. Otis and I'll be back on Sunday to break it all down. But until then, that's going to do it for this week's Arkansas Football Recruiting Report. That is Otis Kirk. I'm Jacob Morris. We'll be back to talk to you next week.